Back in 2001, I attended the BASA Black Softball World Series in Mobile, Alabama. Now, it was a great weekend. The team I was playing with at that time was Cedric the Entertainer's team. We had a good weekend. We made it to Sunday. We battled and we competed. And I will never forget Saturday night. It was a pretty blue sky. Food was being grilled everywhere. I was listening to Southern soul, blues music. Black people congregating, loving one another, dancing, enjoyed each other's company. And then the next day, I packed up my bags and headed back to St. Louis. I drove 14 hours by myself back to St. Louis. And the one thing that I can recall about making that trip is that I listened to Project Pat, Take the Charge, almost a million times because I was in love with that song when I first heard it. And it was my motivating song for the weekend for me to perform. And I remember upon arriving in St. Louis, I went straight to the hospital. My father had just had knee surgery, so I didn't take time to go home to unpack my bags. I went straight to the hospital. Upon arriving in the lobby, I seen people everywhere in the lobbies. People were watching the TV in the gift shops, in the cafeteria. It was almost like they were under a spell, a trance, almost like a zombie apocalypse. And as I walked up to the TV to witness what had people's attention, I noticed that the North Tower of the World Trade Center, right there live on media coverage, it had a black, smoking, gaping hole in the side of the building. And I'm thinking to myself, and I asked the question, hey, what's going on? What just happened? One of the people alluded and said, hey, a plane just hit the North Tower of the World Trade Center. For some reason in the moment, it didn't strike me. It didn't touch me. It didn't impact me. I'm like, this is happening in New York. This is 1,000 miles away from me. Oh, well. So as I made my way to my father's room, I saw my mom, saw my dad. I think there were a few family members there. And they were also locked in the TV as well. For my father is a U.S. Army veteran. And by the time I made it to his room, the second plane had hit. Now, this time, I caught this live as well as everybody else in the world that was watching. And for some reason, I'm like, this can't be real. It just seems so surreal. It seemed like a video game. It seemed like a movie. But this is actually happening live in real time. But even when the second plane hit, for some reason, I was just numb. I wasn't emotional. I wasn't impacted. I low-key to the point almost really didn't care. Because for some reason, I just was not connected to this tragedy. And then it happened. The world witnessed two monumental buildings. Monstrous construction structures crumbled all the way to the ground. Now, there were many questions I had about what happened on that day. Why did this happen? Why did they send so many first responders in these buildings, knowing that these buildings were eventually going to be compromised and crushed? Fast forward to 2 weeks ago. I was watching a documentary on 9/11. And we all know from since 2001 to the present, there's millions of thousands of documentaries on 9/11. A lot of them sound uncouth. A lot of them were sensationalized. Of course, you always had the conspiracy theories, right? One of them is, for me, as a Yankees fan, I told people in 2001, the Yankees had to throw the World Series. You know, Mariano Rivera, who hardly ever blew a save in 5 years when they were playing against the Arizona Diamondbacks at that time, he turned around and threw a ball in the center field. He's a pitcher. Pitchers have the most accuracy whenever they release a ball. But he had to do that. Because if the Yankees win the World Series that year, where are they going to celebrate? They're going to march downtown New York over unrecovered bodies, building debris, smoke still in the air, biohazards. What would they celebrate? And so a lot of times people said that was cap, that was conspiracy theory. But this is not where I'm going with this. So upon watching this documentary 2 weeks ago, this documentary was the first time I ever felt a pulse about 9/11. This was the first documentary that took me into the last moments of the people who knew they were inevitably going to die. I heard the flight attendant talking to the 911, giving the description of the hijackers. I heard the voice of the hijackers. They even gave up the audio of people calling from within inside the World Trade Center who were on the top levels, who had no idea what was going on. The only thing that they knew that it seemed like the building was getting hot. None of them had a clue that the building was beneath them and about to implode and take the whole structure down to the ground. But then there was those who did witness it, and there were calls of panic. And I heard this one time, this one audio where this guy was talking, and then all of a sudden it went black. As soon as the building started crumbling, it went black. And I heard the audio from first responders who were witnessing the things that was happening in real time, that even saw their death coming as soon as the buildings began to crumble. This was the first time I had a pulse about 9/11. This is the first time where my heart bled for all those who lost their lives in 9/11. Now, I have a heart for people, period. I cannot tell you to this day why that tragedy is just now impacting me almost, 24 years later? But it is, and it has. And I would like to give my deepest condolences and sympathies to those who lost their lives during the tragedy of 9/11. Me as a black man, I've had enough tragedies in my own personal life, and maybe that's what made me numb. But this particular documentary took me deep, and it seared to the core. And I got a little bit emotional. Can you imagine what it's like to be a part of a tragedy knowing that you're going to die? And one of the biggest points that I want to make, and one of the biggest things that crossed my mind while I was watching this documentary, how many of those people boarded that plane that day and had no idea that that would be their last day that they would see and hear from their loved ones? How many people went to the World Trade Center that day and went to work like any other day, any other time, and started their work day, got their coffee, went up to their floors, whatever, had been working there 20, 30 years, all the way on the top level of the building, top floors. Nobody saw it coming. But my main question is, before they left out for work, before they boarded the plane that day, did they tell their loved ones that they loved them? Did they tell them how much they care about them and how proud they are? Did they leave in an argument with their spouse? Were they at a division with their children? Were they unhappy with life and other family members or whatever may be going on? Were they unhappy with their career? The point that I'm trying to drive home is that when it comes to life, life is a very human, fragile existence. There's an old saying, on your wellest day, you're good enough to die. Within the last couple of weeks, I've lost so many loved ones and friends, and it was unexpected. Nobody wakes up and anticipates to pass a transition on that day. But on that particular day, when I watched this documentary, this is the number one thing that crossed my mind. What did they say when they seen their loved ones for the last time? And were they able to contact the loved ones before the last time, before the ultimate demise? We all have to go, regardless if it's by a tragedy, natural causes, an accident. Shout out to Angie Stone. She just passed the other day in a car accident. There's another young man who just lost his life down in Houston, and they killed him along with his daughter. The point that I'm trying to make is that as time goes on, you have to love on your loved ones a little bit harder. I just put a post on Facebook the other day because it hit me. Why do so many people play games with life? We wake up every day, including me. We kind of have a subconscious way where we wake up where we just take life for granted, where we just know we're going to live that day. We're going to make it through the whole day. And for many people, that was not the reality. But with the 9/11 situation, my heart deeply goes to all the families that were impacted on that day. I now have become sensitive to what happened on that day. And sometimes the situation with me and what happened on 9/11 back in 2001 is the same thing when a lot of times you may lose a loved one. You will mourn in the moment. But sometimes it don't hit you till like years later that this person is actually gone. We as people, we go through so much. We tuck a lot of trauma and pain deep to the core to where we normalize suppressing it. But as you know, I always say certain things are going to reemerge that are sitting dormant in the core of your soul, your memories, your childhood traumas, your experiences. It's always sitting there. So you have to deal with it. When 9/11 took place, I didn't deal with it. I just looked at it as, hey, it happened. The country's never going to be the same again. They're going to put laws into act for safety. And I don't want to get into the conspiracy theories. I don't want to talk about why 9/11 happened. That's irrelevant to the point. The point that I'm trying to make is that regardless of what you do in life or who you think you are, how much money and status, you had better really cultivate and master loving on your loved ones and cherishing life each and every single day. Now, there's another component to this conversation. Many people know my legal name is Jihad. Jihad is a very striking name to the American narrative and the spin on certain right-wing news outlets, reporters, and analysts. They say this was the work of the ISIS, a group, an Al-Qaeda ISIS group. And it's very ironic that they would name a terrorist group after the history of an African queen. And then they would call it a jihad or a jihadi or jihadist. Let me explain something to you and give you a little history and a little research on what's not being discussed. First of all, the name jihad means war within self, a struggle against sin, self-evaluation, defender of Islam. Islam means peace. Muslim means to submit to the will of God. However, I am not a Muslim. But let's take it a little bit further, take it a little bit deeper into the context of this conversation. Now, they say that this name is triggering and that jihadists are responsible for every single terrorist act across the globe. But when we look back on January 6th and that insurrection, what took place on Capitol Hill, were those people not Christians, white nationalists? They loved Jesus, white pride and white power. Those were Christians that took over those buildings. There were no jihadists. There was no jihad. There was a war against the government. Jihad is a holy war to defend Islam, which means peace. Or let's not forget about what took place, I believe it was back in 2016 in Oregon when they took over an agricultural building, armed. And that happened on January the 2nd. Those were Christians. These were God-fearing white males who took over a government building. So where I'm going with this is the narratives and the spins on the truth and reality most of the time is false, it's a farce, and it's not true, it is not correct. If we're understanding history correctly, we understand that the Crusaders were the original terrorists of the planet from Eastern Europe that wanted to take control over the land from North and West Africa, where it was Muslim dominated and controlled. And it started as early as the earliest part of the medieval centuries in the 1000s, the 1100s, the 1200s, the 1300s. The Christian Crusaders were a military organization that crusaded, destroyed, killed, murdered, and pillaged any and all who did not accept the principles of Christianity. So when we spin it, let's understand what we're saying when we say these names and these narratives for the spin. It shouldn't boil down to pointing the blame on anyone or anything, because anytime something that happens on a tragic level to that magnitude, that size, and that type of event, you best believe it was an inside job. So let's understand one thing. Two things I want you to understand is understanding the narrative, bullshit narratives from the truth. The second thing is loving on your loved ones each and every single day of your life. I ask people for my forgiveness for not having a pulse or being sensitive or understanding what happened on 9/11. Because some people could sit and watch this and be like, how the hell could you not have a heart for what happened? I just simply didn't. But now I do. And I apologize. Years later, it's just now impacting me. And I apologize. Matter of fact, I only watched the documentary one time and that was it. And I know a lot of people are saying, what documentary is it? You know what? I think I watched it on Pluto TV and it's only like 58 minutes short. And I just know it just said 9/11. And so if that's the documentary that I'm referring to, it's on Pluto about 9/11. But that must be the most graphic, impacting documentary I've ever seen when it came to 9/11. As I always say, man, if you like the content that I share on this channel, please like, share, subscribe, tell a problem solver to come on in. Please forgive me. I know I've been slow with the uploads. Last week I did not upload an episode. Softball season is back in now. I'm coaching 2 teams. Not only that, I officially started my GHSA umpiring career. My first 2 games I've been behind the plate. I really didn't want to step into it like that. I wanted to just be in the field and kind of just cruise and take it easy. But I'm being trained by one of the best, 1 or 2 black women who are certified and MLB trained in Natola Hawthorne, who recently just received her own day as far as DeKalb County recognizing her in that particular day as Natola Hawthorne Day. She is historic. She is legendary. I want to give a shout out to her. Thank you for all the wisdom and the jewels and everything that you're pouring into me. All right. And let me tell you something. If y'all owe me some money, if y'all owe me some money, your kid comes to the plate and I'm behind the plate and I'm striking their ass out until you pay my money, right? No, I'm just playing. I'm just playing. And if you have not today ordered your copy, I haven't done this in a while. Powering the Perfect You, self-improvement tips for black men in the era of rejecting masculinity. This is a startup book, mainly for like a lot of young men who haven't been married yet. If you haven't, young men who don't have children, this is the perfect gift. This is the perfect book that I think that you should get for them. And as well, men my age who, we've been through a lot of things in life, midlife crisis, depression, whatever the case may be. This book right here is supplemental for you to get back on your path, your course, self-development, self-improvement. I've evolved. Everybody that's followed me since I very started my first show, which was Jihad Live, went to Humanity Works, The Acquired Man, and I've been through quite a few name changes, but I think right now where we're at with the Rise and Cream podcast is perfect because people throughout society, and I'm not talking about athletes, I'm not talking about entertainers, but just people within close proximity impact your life in positive ways. Listen, your local recreational coach, your realtor, your plumber, your electricians, your paramedics, your police officers, your firemen, these people impact your lives within close proximity. A lot of times we spend money to buy the jersey of our favorite athlete or our team. We go out to sports bars and we support our teams. But it's funny to me how society is so backwards. I think, teachers should make six-figure salaries. I think that people who put their lives on the line to keep the country going, military personnel, they need to be paid more. And also, I'm going to do an episode about the VA because I think the VA really needs to be probed because the stuff that veterans go through just to get their benefits, just to be treated like somebody. You get this 20-year-old, 30-year-old millennial kid with an attitude that don't understand what that military person has been through, the PTSD that they're suffering from, and how they sacrifice their civilian life for them to enjoy the luxuries and the freedoms that they enjoy every single day. I think that is a real problem. So hopefully maybe, this administration will probe that to put the right people in the office and treat our veterans with respect. And if you are a veteran, my heart goes out to you. I salute you. Thank you for your services, as well as people who make society go, right? I have nothing against athletes and entertainers. I just love real people that impact people's lives, that solve problems, that are valuable to those in the moment, in the second, in the hour. All right. I'm grateful for everybody that supports this show. I value you enough to love you the right way. And this is the place where we're bringing sexy back to the everyday hardworking men and women who impact your life within close proximity. We want to rise above this madness, which is called Black culture. And that's based on the code by Nelly Fuller Jr., who recently transitioned last month. So that was a devastating blow for me and the impact, as well as the family member Andy Anderson. And I have to throw DeAndre in there, my cousin Vale. I know the last show I gave you a shout out. I'm giving you another shout out today. I FaceTimed you. Just love to see your face. And with the grandbabies, I'm pushing for you. I don't know what it's like not to have, a mother here, a brother here, but I just want to tell you because I love you and I admire your strength. Now, as I always get out of here, man, remember, the biggest mistake that you can make in life is to think that you have time. Until next time, peace.